Welcome to StaffBuffalo's Pain Points podcast, where we unravel the complexities of staffing, human resources, and other challenges faced by businesses today. Welcome to today's Pain Points podcast. I'm here with Len Morrissey. Len is a banking professional turned entrepreneur turned author. And so I've gotten to know Len over the years. I absolutely love your story, Len. And I think it shows a lot of the risk you've taken in your career over the year, the success you've had, and the parallels really between banking, being an entrepreneur, and writing a book. There's probably so many.
There's a ton of them.
Similarities and pain points you've discovered along the way. So thank you for being with us today on the podcast. And I want you to start by telling everyone the story of your journey.
Love seeing you, Lauren, and thanks for having me on. So the journey, I'm Canadian originally, came from Canada, and I won't tell you like right from the time I was 2, but came from Canada.
We have time, it's fine.
All right, okay, good. So I started a little boy now. I actually came here to the U.S. I found a job with a bank, Citizens Bank, and I traveled across, sold everything I had, dumped all my RRSPs, which are equivalent to 401ks in the U.S., got into my Dodge Intrepid and drove to the U.S. for my job one day before 9/11. So that was sort of the journey. Yeah. So that was
interesting time to move to the U.S. I can imagine.
My goodness, I was lucky because I probably would not be here now if that didn't happen.
Right.
Because that probably would have took years after that, and I probably would have gave up on it because it was a year-long process just to get a job and get in here.
What made you want to take a job in the U.S.?
Yeah, that's another long question. I'll try to make it short, but I was in banking in Canada, and Canada's different. I love Canada, but it's not necessarily as entrepreneurial as I wanted it to be. The banking was kind of tough. There's only 4 main banks in Canada, and I said, I need to expand my horizon. I was getting tired of it, which is a common theme with me. I like to try new things. Yeah. So I said, I'm gonna leave everything, which I had family and friends and career, and I'm gonna try it out in the U.S. I just love the idea of what the U.S. offered. So I found a job. Convinced them to give me a visa, an H-1B visa, which was really hard to do at the time. And so I said, I need to take that chance, and I drove here. Of course, a week later, kind of common in my life, I sort of sat at a phone booth talking to my good friend, and I said, I made a mistake. I can't believe I came down here.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that was a week after I moved. Well, it was 9/11, and I realized that I knew nobody. I had nobody here.
Right.
But like life, I put one foot in front of the other. And, lo and behold, it's 24 years later, right?
Yeah.
So I've had this constant urge in my life to try different things. And a lot of people try a lot more things, but that was one of them. I really wanted to come down and try something different here.
So 24 years later, looking back, you glad you stuck it out past that first tough week?
Absolutely. I have my personality, I don't really look in the past that much in the sense of regret, because everything, and I know it's kind of corny, but everything you do in the past creates who you are now. So I probably would have done things slightly different, but no, I don't regret it at all. And I love it here, and I'm Canadian and American, but if someone said you had to pick one, I'd absolutely be American. So I love
well, we're glad to have you.
Oh, I appreciate it.
And there's so many similarities between Canada and the U.S., and it's not too far from
now we're 25 minutes away to Toronto.
I know.
Well, not Toronto, but
the border.
Exactly.
Yeah, quick hour and a half drive, depending on traffic, up to Toronto.
Yeah.
That's why I think one of the beautiful things about being in Western New York is you have such access to a major international city an hour and a half away.
And when I moved to Boston, and I did some research before I moved there, and 2% of people from Boston came from Newfoundland, which is where I'm from. So the cultures are very similar. There's hardly any difference. There's difference in states and provinces, but the assimilation was easy. The difficulties were loneliness and uncertainty and unfamiliar, not being familiar with the people and the places, but you get over that eventually.
Well, knowing you the past few years, I can imagine it didn't take you too long to kind of make friends and find your network and your people and start building your life in Boston. I'm sure a lot of that had to do with probably diving in headfirst to your career in banking.
Yes. Yeah, you know me, Lauren, but I don't know how well you know me. I'm actually very introvert, which a lot of people get confused. They think that's not social. For me, I love people. I love being around people, but I get my energy from being alone. So everything I do, even contacting you 5 years ago before I moved to Buffalo, is a chore. So it's not a natural thing for me to say, hey, Lauren, you don't know me, but I'm this guy, Len. But I do it because I created habits doing it. And when I moved to the U.S. and in banking, sort of naturally you get to see a lot of people, you get to meet a lot of people, a lot of companies. I was a commercial banker, so you build your network up really fast, right, with employees and with owners and their employees. So that within a couple of years of moving here, not here, but in Boston, it felt like home almost, because you do quickly get that network.
It's awesome. I'm a huge proponent of the quote, be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yes.
That's where you learn, that's where you grow, that's where you kind of really thrive. And it sounds to me that's probably something you do too.
I'm always uncomfortable.
You force yourself in those uncomfortable situations and you grow. You build your network, build your businesses, write a book.
Yes. all the things I do are very uncomfortable. For example, I don't want to get into music much, but I played in bands many years, and I'm not a very good singer. So I said, I'm going to get singing lessons for 4 years and have my own band. And I did that. I got my own band. I sang. I was the head man of my own band for a couple years in Boston. And then I stopped because I'm like, I'm not that good. But I was uncomfortable every moment of those 6 years doing it.
Oh my gosh. Did you like it or did you hate it?
I loved it.
You loved it.
But I wasn't that great, and I know my strengths and my weaknesses. But so I actually, to your point, I like being uncomfortable. When I'm not uncomfortable, I'm uncomfortable, if that makes any sense. I feel at loss.
Complacent.
Yes. I feel like my life is I talk to my poor wife. She has to deal with it all the time. When things are going great is when I started getting nervous. I'm like, but what else? So I like feeling uncomfortable. It makes me feel alive.
Yeah.
Now, not uncomfortable to jump on a plane. That is not something I want to do. but yeah, I do like feeling uncomfortable. I think I'm glad I'm that way.
So tell me about navigating your career in banking.
Yep.
And how that led you to a career as an entrepreneur and starting businesses.
Well, banking is something that I absolutely loved getting into. If everybody could be a banker, they should be, because you learn a lot of skills. You learn how to understand financials, you profit and loss. You understand how companies, especially in the commercial side, you understand how companies are successful and what makes a good entrepreneur and good leaders and good employees. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But the problem being in banking is that it's rigid. So there's a lot of risk aversion, and there's a lot of process. And my type of personality is I'm risk tolerant, and I'm not process oriented, not naturally.
Okay.
Now I can be, but it's
Right.
not a natural thing for me to do. So my instincts in banking, maybe in year 10, started to clash. And I became very successful. I moved a lot, but I was very unhappy. So the last 7 years of banking were dark years in some ways. They were learning ones, but they were dark in the sense that I wasn't feeling fulfilled. And
Was it because you were bored? Was it because of that clash of like process oriented versus?
yeah, I don't think I was ever bored. Boredom is many things to many people, but maybe bored. But it was more about that. When, for example, I worked for, I won't name the bank because I love the people there, but I went in to help make their bank very popular with SBA. And they said, if this happens, this is where you'll go. And these are the things you'll accomplish, and these are the things we'll give you. And it never worked out that way. They became very successful, but so they're very risk adverse. They're for a good reason. You know, they're using people's monies and deposits.
Oh
and
yeah,
whatnot.
they have to be very conservative when you're in the banking world.
You got to be conservative. You got to be risk adverse. You got to do the right things, and that's great. But I wanted to go and make decisions, and I wanted to fail sometimes, and you can't really do that. So I think it was more of a clash of what my body and mind was wanting to do, and what the industry said you can't really do here. Yeah,
and so talking about taking risks, I'm sure that led obviously to your entrepreneurial journeys.
Yes.
Being in a bank, how did you find like kind of maybe navigating the risk or assessing risk and risk tolerance as you took the next step?
That's what you get really good at. Well, you get good at it or you get bad at it. What I mean by bad at it is that sometimes it's like really, really intelligent people, which I'm not one of, but really intelligent people will not make a lot of risk choices because they know the consequences. So bankers in many ways, they become so risk adverse that when they're looking at opportunities, they'll say, well, here's all the things that could go wrong. So thankfully, that didn't happen to me. It happens to a lot of bankers, and there's one of the reasons why bankers don't become entrepreneurs. But for me, I never got caught up in that. I wanted to take more chances, but it was still hard. And I remember Jay Jacobs was the owner of Rapid Manufacturing in New Hampshire, and he was my client. So this is the conversion from me becoming a banker to, I guess, in the entrepreneurial world.
Yeah.
So Jay was my owner, and I'll probably go off on a tangent, I apologize, but
that's okay.
So he was my client, he was the owner of this company. It was an $8 million, $7 million company at the time, but he grew it from ground up. And him and I would do what you and I do every now and again. We go for lunches, we talk on the phone. We did that once every 6 months. And then a few years later, he said, I need a new CFO, and I want you to help me find them. I said, great. So for 6 months, we tried to find some of them, and he's like, they're not good enough, they won't do the job. And I'm like, Jay, what do you want? He's like, I need someone like you. I go, well, there's nobody like me, which is hilarious. I actually said those words. And then he said, no, I need you. And I'm like, I'm not a CFO. I don't have an accountant. I have a business degree, but I'm not an accountant. I'm not a CPA. I don't want to do that. I'm not a CFO. And so for the next year, he tried to convince me to become his CFO, a year. And I said no to it for a full year. Now, I had to take a major pay cut. I mean, I'm talking about a 6-figure pay cut.
Oh, wow.
More than that.
Wow.
So it was hard for me to do it. So I was stuck for a little bit, I was stuck in that, I've got all my networking, I've got all my knowledge, I've got everything about me as a banker. And now I'm going to leave that and become a CFO for a company in New Hampshire that I don't really know that much about. This is too risky. It took me a year to make that decision.
What made you finally make the decision? When were you like, I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off and just do this?
I talked to a lot of people, and my wife will tell you that I talk to a lot, but I make my own decision. I do, and most people said, "Don't do it. You're going to go from a really, really good job to a really low-paying job, and who knows how that's going to work out." But one of my friends, a really good friend, Cameron, he's been an entrepreneur, and his parents were entrepreneurs, and he said to me, "This is an opportunity of a lifetime." And I was leaning that way heavily, but this is the straw. And he said, "If they offered you nothing, take it." And that was it. So I sort of needed that push. And lots of people pushed or pulled, but that was I felt like I'm only going to feel worse as the years go by. I'm going to have the golden handcuffs trapping me in this industry, and I'm not going to feel any better.
Right.
So I ripped that Band-Aid off. It was hard to rip that off.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
I think you get sometimes to the point, though, where you just have to do it. You could always go back to banking.
Always.
So you maybe make that move, and a year, 2 years into it, you're like, I made the wrong move.
Yes.
Let me call up my network in the bank, and I'm sure they could find a job for you, or you could find a job
that was
anywhere.
Always.
So you have that safety net.
Exactly. No, you placed it perfectly, and that's exactly what I had the risk. I had that sort of the fallback on easily.
Yeah.
So that made it a lot easier to do, but it's still hard to do because
it's very hard. When Maggie and I started StaffBuffalo, I didn't make the leap into it until 2 years in. I was in pharmaceutical sales, and it was kind of the same thing. It was like the golden handcuffs.
And you got paid really, really well in that industry.
Great. Yeah, I did well, and then it's like, but I don't want to look back and say, why didn't I do this? Right. Why didn't I do that then? And I knew I could always go back to pharmaceutical sales. I won't. I'm going to say, I love what we do at StaffBuffalo, and we've grown the business and grown the team, and I work with amazing clients. But I was kind of doing it when's the right time for me? When's the right time for StaffBuffalo? Especially when we're starting a company and building it from the ground up, bootstrapping it. So
you said something, Lauren, that I've been saying for myself for 25 years. I don't want to be on my deathbed saying, man, I should have tried that. And my greatest fear in my life is regret of not trying stuff, not failing. I don't care about failing, because failing is just an opportunity to learn. I believe that to the core. But if I'm on my deathbed and I go, man, I should have did this, or I should have went here, or I should have tried that, I don't have those regrets yet. I mean, I still got a lot of, hopefully, knock on wood, life left to go. But that is what I say to myself every time a hard decision enters my brain. And that's how it helps me get over that hump.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to do it. I am a very big proponent of jumping in head first and sometimes figuring it out. Yeah. Even if it's on a board that I'm a part on, they're like, get tapped and you're like, all right, I would think you'll be a great president of this board. I'm like, sure, me? I'm like, all right, let's dive in head first and do it, and we'll figure it out. Yep. And you learn and grow that way. And I think as an entrepreneur and owning a business, you really have to lean on people around you who are experts at other things, whether it's accounting, finance, marketing, sales consultants. That's going to help you grow and be better too, and learn. And you don't have to know everything.
That's the biggest thing, I think, like learning to be an entrepreneur. And I do a lot of consulting on the side as well. And one of the challenges for entrepreneurs is the letting go part, right? And I don't have any problems with letting go. And what that means is when you first start a company, as you know and I know, you have to do everything. Right? And most times we think we do it really, really well. Yeah. Most times we don't. We just think we do it, right? We don't. Yeah. But we do some parts of it really, really well, and other parts we don't do that well.
So it's just piecing things together.
We're holding with duct tape if we're lucky, right? Yeah. But good entrepreneurs, what they realize is that, one, you don't build companies yourself. You can't. You need a group of people. You need a network to help you build it. And if you're managing them too closely, if you have them on a stick and you're whipping them, that doesn't work in the long run. You got to have people that you say, make this better and let me know if you need any help.
Right.
And the good ones, and what I mean good ones, people who want to grow and want to be really successful. You can have lots of reasons for companies, and you don't have to grow all the time. But
right.
the ones that want to be wealthy and grow and be really successful are the ones that let go. Mm-hmm. And in banking, in many ways, you had that sort of compartmentalized. That was sort of part of the process. But I never really thought about it until I became an entrepreneur, and until I worked with Jay at Rapid. I was a CFO, but in effect, I was really the president for a long time. I eventually became the president, and I oversaw everything. And I would touch on stuff for 10 minutes a day that required 50 hours a day. Mm-hmm. So you just have to have really good people doing really good things all the time. And that was the part that I naturally fell into, in the sense like, I'm good with this, you do it.
Right.
But it's hard for a lot of people to do that.
Oh, it's very hard.
Yeah.
Absolutely. As an entrepreneur, so you made the step to Rapid
Yep.
as CFO.
Yep.
What was your next step after that? And what made you prepare yourself for the next step?
So I guess we grew the company in 6 years from 8 million to 50 million.
Wow.
And I became president, which really was the same job. And
you just kind of realized this isn't necessarily a CFO role, so let's change the title.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of reasons. We were trying to sell the company to a publicly traded company.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so we had to do some restructuring and stuff. But yeah, it was effectively the same role, because I had a great director of finance and a great accounting manager. They did all the work. I didn't do anything. Mm-hmm. Not really in the finance. I did some things. Of course, I oversaw it. But so when we got ready to sell it and sold it, then, which was a fantastic experience in and of itself, selling a company to a publicly traded company. Stressful, but...
Could we pause there? What were the pain points associated with selling?
Oh, I'm going to write a book about that someday.
Okay, that's your next book.
It is.
Maybe
I'll write it with Jay.
Book.
My next book, yeah. Because I'm on my second book now.
Yeah.
But, yeah, well, selling a company is, boy, that's a whole process. You've got to prepare to sell. Mm-hmm. A lot of people they'll say, I want to sell next year. Well, a selling process is years. To do it right, you have to think about it for years. And then let's get to the point where you can find someone who wants to buy you for a reasonable dollar. Then you've got to have due diligence. You're trying to convince everyone to say it, everyone's happy, and then they want to buy it, and then they try to lower the value of the company. So you got to deal with all those ups and downs and mood swings for everybody. It's almost too complicated to get in here, but it was basically like selling a company was like running a company. You had all these different stakeholders with all these different perspectives. So, for example, when the employees found out we were selling, they got a perspective, right? And they're fearful. So you've got to deal with that. You've got to deal with the new owners coming in. You've got to deal with the existing management and how they're going to be impacted by it.
Right.
And then you got to deal with how do you integrate the companies when you do sell. So there's so many pain points. In fact, it was the best time of my life and the worst time of my life, because I had two jobs: one to try and sell it, and one to try to run the company. And neither one of them I was doing very well at it.
And you're navigating both parties, right? Like both sides, external side of
and
the
internal
potential
side.
buyer,
Yes.
and then the internal side. And
yes, and then your customers.
Yeah.
And trying to still grow the company. It was like I said, it was absolutely fantastic experience, but it was also very stressful, because money does things to people in the sense of it creates stressors. Personally, I won't talk about how it creates stressors for others, but for me it was like, wow, this is going to be a little bit of a windfall for me. This is going to be great. But I also had to keep myself in check to say, well, is this the right thing for Jay and the employees and the other companies? So you're constantly fighting against yourself and your own ideas about how your life is going to unfold, and also doing the right thing for all the other things.
For everyone else, too.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I realize sometimes you can't come out of it unscathed. Mm-hmm. So some employees, some close friends didn't like that we sold, and I don't talk to them anymore. I mean, I would talk to them, but they don't talk to me. So that stuff kind of happens just naturally. Unfortunately, it's just human nature. But we could literally sit here for 10 hours talking about that, and we wouldn't even be at the tipping point.
I know, I'm sure. There's a lot of things that go into it.
There are.
So what was the next step after that?
Yeah, so when we sold that, I stayed there for a year, and a publicly traded company was not something I wanted to do. But so I left that after about a year, and I started up draftpick.com, which is, I guess, if you know anything about Untapped, it's a beer company, online beer company that connects beer lovers with breweries all over the country. So myself and a good friend of mine, Mike Moore, started that up. So that was my first true entrepreneurial company. But I did that at the same time I wanted to retire, or I thought about retiring.
Yeah.
So I said, I'll create this little company and I'll retire at the same time.
Kind of like your hobby project as you retire.
Yes, it was. And Mike still works for the previous company. And so it was more like, let's see if this works. It's kind of fun. We both like craft beers, and we love visiting breweries all over the country.
So there's a lot of testing that went on with it too.
First 2 years is all development, absolutely, yeah. And it wasn't really a lot of work. Maybe Mike would say differently, because Mike worked his butt off. Mike's the programmer, designer, all that stuff. So, but for me, it was more like, I'm going to see if I can enjoy calmness. And Lauren, let me tell you, it was not fun.
Oh.
The 2 years, it was miserable. I was miserable. I was 44, 45 years old. Everybody else was working.
Right.
My wife was working all the time. I was home I watched every Netflix show. I read every book. It was boring as heck.
Were you in Buffalo at this point?
No, I was still in Boston.
You're still in Boston,
yeah, in
okay.
Reading, yeah.
So either way, you have, I can imagine, just a boring, dull January, February.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
When it's just, those months can be painful.
It was painful.
When it comes to, it's cold, it's dreary,
Right.
Nothing much is going on.
Exactly. And it was, and the worst part of it was my brain. So my brain never really shuts down. And what I mean by that is it's always moving. I mean, most people's brains move. My wife says no to that. But my mind is constantly going. And when it's going, but you're not doing anything, there's a disconnect, right? Mm-hmm. So I'd be sitting around thinking about all these things, and then I go, well, I don't really have anything to do tomorrow. So it was not a fun 2 years.
Must have been a really weird feeling for you too.
Yeah, it was, because I struggle to be in the moment. Mm-hmm. So my entire life was never looking in the past, but was looking at today and recognizing for what it was and trying to enjoy it. For me, it's always what's going on in the future.
Right.
Right. And today was a means to get to the future.
Yeah.
So that was really hard, because there was really nothing in the future. You can go on some beach vacations and drink pina coladas, but after a week that gets really boring. Right? Your stomach can't handle it.
No.
Besides the other stuff.
You're like, gotta get back to reality and routine and
yeah,
diet and exercise.
Well, it's funny, because I thought I was a certain person that never liked routine.
Yeah.
And my wife, who knows me better than I know me, she's like, you have routines all through your day, Len. So I started realizing, like, I miss going to work, even though it was an hour's drive and I did 35,000 miles every year. But I miss the forcing function of being in front of people, because naturally I won't be in front of people.
Right.
But work forces it.
Forces you to do it.
Yeah. And I
brings the extrovert out in you.
It does. It forces the extrovert out of me. And my wife told me, when you work, Len, you left at 6:30 and got home at 9:30.
Oh my gosh.
So that was 15, 16 hours a day that was cut out.
Right.
Now I've got like 24 hours a day with myself, and that is not a good place to be.
No.
Not for me anyway. Some people can handle it really well, but not me.
Yeah, I think you need the brain stimulation, the intellectual stimulation, this social stimulation.
The social stimulation.
Like all those things are so beneficial from when you are working.
Yes.
And just, like you said, using your brain, exercising your brain. I think you really, truly need to exercise your brain on a regular basis in order to stay, like, functioning in life, in society, and stay sharp and healthy.
Absolutely.
And it helps your longevity.
It does help your longevity. And for me, like, what I realized over the last 6 years, 7 years, and I really didn't understand this, was that I learn in a different way. So even when I was home, I would study, I would learn instruments, I would always try to learn stuff, but I learn best when I'm explaining it to someone else. So if I'm learning something, how I develop the knowledge is when I'm trying to teach it to somebody else, even though when I don't know it. So because I'm not extroverted, that's difficult for me to do on my own.
Right. Yeah.
So when I was going to see people all day, and I'd be meetings, 8, 9 meetings a day, and then I would take people out for a dinner or a drink or something. Most days, I did a lot of teaching to learn, and that was all cut out.
Right.
And my wife is like, I don't want to hear about your harmonica lesson, or the book you're reading now, or the French defense in your chess, because I'm a chess player. That was hard.
Yeah. A lot of pain points.
Yes, a lot of pain points.
To that aspect of your life, it sounds like, but it sounds like it took you to the next step.
Well,
in your journey?
It definitely took me to the next step. But then I said, okay, right around COVID, I started writing the book, just before I started thinking about it. And then COVID occurred, and I started writing the book. Then I think in late 2020, I called up my friend, Tony, because we do business with StaffBuffalo, and you guys have been a great partner for us. But so I called up Tony, and Tony's a doctor, a physician, and an attorney, but he's primarily a physician. And I said, Tony, I want you to retire from your job, from both being a doctor and physician, and maybe your wife can retire. She was a pharmacist. They're a little older than I am. And I said, I want you to join my company, Morrissey Metcalfe. And he's like, what are you talking about? I said, here's my idea. I got a great idea. Let's do it. And 3 months later, we formed it. 6 months later, he retired, and we started developing this business. So without those pain points of 2 years of kind of agony in a way. I mean, it wasn't
Right.
pain. Like a lot of people go through agony. I'm not saying this was like horrible for me, but a lot of internal sort of research and searching, soul searching, got to this point where I said, I got to do something.
I'm trying to figure out what your next step is.
Yeah, and I along the way, Jay was one of the guys. Jay Jacobs from Rapid was one of the individuals who said, Len, you're really good at banking. You know banking. Why don't you create a banking company that somehow use your skills for other banks in the country?
So tell us about Morrissey Metcalfe.
Yes.
And the type of work and business it is.
Yep. So it's a service company that effectively we're expanding our services. That's a pain point we'll get to probably. But originally what we started up as we underwrite loans for banks, not like insurance companies. So when a business goes to a bank and says, we want to get a commercial real estate loan, a line of credit, maybe an equipment loan, the banks have to actually analyze that information and then make a decision on that. And usually they have back staff to do that, underwriters, we call them. And if the demand is too high, then they'll outsource that. So banks, credit unions, loan service providers, certified development corporations, which are quasi-banks. So we have the skill set to be able to do that for them. So we're helping them when they're too busy. And that's sort of our main part of the business.
And so you clearly, from your experiences in banking, saw pain points that were needed for the banks.
Yes.
Right? So
exactly. What were they?
what were they?
Yeah. So I didn't really know if they had them. I just assumed they had them because I was in banking for such a long time. But when banks get busy and a customer comes, let's say that your business, StaffBuffalo, goes out and says, we want to buy a property and we want to hire another 20 people and we really want to expand. And you go to a bank and they're going, great, we'll get to it in 3 months. And you're like, I can't wait for 3 months. I've got an offer on the purchase of property. I need to sell it in a month or buy it in a month. So we said, well, we'll be the extra source for that bank to be able to do it. Sometimes you got great wood. Or I talked to one individual and his rate was so high a few years ago. I said, if you let me go in and help you find a new bank or an existing bank, I could probably save you half of your cost of your loans, which was substantial.
It's huge.
And they're like, nah, I'm good. Happens all the time. So,
wow.
But does it happen to you in your business with HR stuff? Like probably. Like, do you talk to people that say, "Oh, well, great, Lauren, it would be great to use you, but I'm good"? Do you see that?
Oh,
much?
all the time. Yeah. And that's, I think, what a lot of what we do, whether it's recruiting, talent optimization, or HR consulting, there's the energy. But that's what they've always done. That's what they know. They don't realize that what they're doing may be wrong,
right,
and not helping them be a more efficient, optimized company. And there's other services out there and solutions out there that can provide better experience for the organization as a whole, and ultimately it helps the company run better. Because for us, we work with people, so we have better people at your organization. So that's going to help you run the organization much better, more efficiently, and everyone's be driving the boat forward.
But not everybody wants it though.
Sometimes I'm sure with banking, it's personal. They don't want to give out too much information about their company or identify, ooh, this is really bad. We were spending way too much money. How do we get around that? And I think sometimes they're afraid to give up that information a little bit, and it's doing them a disservice.
It's interesting, the psychology of the human brain. I've dealt with entrepreneurs a lot that, like, I'll help them try to sell the company, and I can say, listen, I could probably help you sell your company for a lot more money. And here are my terms and conditions. I won't charge you unless we can over a certain amount. And they say no. And it's like, a lot of times, entrepreneurs, people, just in general, not just entrepreneurs, people almost, it's a bad way to say it, but they don't want success. It's almost like, if you come in and help me, Len, or Lauren, if you come in and help us, that means I've failed some way. And and I get that sort of like, God, I should have thought of that. I'm not like that. If someone helps me, I'm like, oh, thank God, because I don't know.
Absolutely.
I hardly know anything, and I got great people around me. But some people are very prideful, and they're like, well, I'm okay with it. Like, I helped consult a company, again, I'm trying not to say names, and they were a small company at like $300,000-$400,000, and I got them to about $750,000 in 1 year.
Wow.
6 months.
That's a big difference for a small company like that.
Yeah, they were around for a long time.
Aww.
And then he said, I'm good, I don't need you anymore. And I'm like, we're just at the CrossFit.
We have so much more we can grow. Let's go.
But so it's not even like that it's wrong or right. It's their philosophy. What I'm trying to do is find those companies and those people that want to improve, right? Because you got to want to improve first.
Absolutely.
And I want to help them. but they're harder to find than you realize, because most of us feel comfortable in certain situations, and to push them out of it is very uncomfortable.
I like to get to a certain point, and then it's like, okay, how do we get to the next step?
Yes.
Do we bring in something else? If we bring in like a professional, for example, our talent optimization side of the business.
Yes, you tell me about
We're
that.
really trying to grow that side. It's new. We're identifying pain points at companies when it comes to their hiring processes.
Right.
They're not efficient. They're losing candidates. They're getting unqualified candidates. They're spending thousands of dollars on Indeed and not getting a single qualified candidate. And their payroll systems, they're spending way too much money. They're not using it. They're not optimizing it. So that's where we come in.
Yeah.
But a lot of times the companies don't realize they have an issue. They don't realize that that issue is something that we can help with. There's a solution out there now.
Right.
So we've talked over the past couple of years that we've been building this out, and we've marketed it different ways. And we've had clients along the way where we've had great success, saving them hundreds of thousands of dollars in recruiting fees, temporary staffing fees.
Right.
So we have data behind it, but still trying to get more and more businesses to realize, ooh, I have a problem and there's a solution and I want to fix it.
Yeah.
So we're working with a marketing company now on a very strategic marketing initiative to help us just reach more potential companies that could benefit from this and realize they have an issue.
And find more people like you. So when you start talking about that, your eyes light up, you get excited, and you're like, I'm all in.
Yeah, it's fun.
So,
I know I can't do it all. We can't do it all. We've been trying, and like sometimes I'm like, we're throwing spaghetti against the wall, and we're seeing what's sticking. Let's actually use something that's a little bit more strategic, a little more targeted, and we give it a shot. If it works, great. If it doesn't, maybe we get a couple of leads out of it. That's great. And other companies, and we just really want to help these companies get better.
And I think you're doing you've got a great process, because what you're saying is really, what I'm hearing anyhow, is finding people that are like you, like me, that want to do that. Mm-hmm. Not everybody wants to do it. So we can continue to hit the same 100 businesses, and 99 of them say, I don't want that help. So I don't care what you say. I don't care what benefits. But you've got to expand the world so that you find more of you, like more people that get excited with that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's a pain. That's something I've struggled with my whole career. Is I love to find people that are similar in thought in that manner, mm-hmm. and not everybody's like it. And I'll tell a funny story, because my wife will kill me, but I'm going to say it anyway. So one time I was. I love deep conversations, right? And talking about spiritual things and other world things. And my wife's brilliant, but she's more pragmatic, and she's down to earth. She's in the moment. Yeah. And I remember when we were first dating, maybe 6 months into it, and she was sat on the couch. We were in Boston still at the time. She was looking sort of out the window and staring off into space. And I got really, really excited. Really excited. I was like, oh my God, this is going to be great, because I want to have a deep conversation with her. And I said, Nadine, what are you thinking about? She was like, huh? I go, what are you thinking about? I really want to know. She goes, oh, nothing. I go, no, seriously, what were you thinking about? She goes, you want to know? I go, yeah, I'm excited with this conversation. She goes, I was thinking about how far my drink is away from me and whether I should get up and get it. And
that was it?
That was it. And she's very philosophical. She's very spiritual in many ways, but people are who they are.
Yeah.
And so for people like us that want to grow and expand and do things, there's lots of people out there, but they're a little harder to find. So you got to have companies like your.
You got to pull it out of them sometimes too.
You got to pull it out of them, or find them, what you're doing with your integration and your marketing company that you're bringing on board.
So we're excited. It hasn't really launched yet. We've been working on it, but we're excited for that to happen.
Good. Excellent.
Now, so you mentioned something a little bit ago, and I think that kind of brings us to your journey as an author.
Yes.
And your book, Cursed Gift.
Yes.
And it's kind of got this spiritual, otherworld type of background, sci-fi.
A little bit sci-fi.
Yeah? Tell us about your journey.
To do that? I was a kid. I was thinking about this before I came here. I was 10 or 11 years old, and I started trying to write my first book at the time, and I think it was on some DOS program. But anyway, I wrote like 3 or 4 chapters of it, and I can't remember what it was about, but it was sci-fi related. Then probably 3 or 4 chapters in, I was like, I can't do this. Mm-hmm. I really regret that. And I regret it every day since, and that was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Almost. So back again through the journey between Rapid and where I am now, my bucket list was to write a book. And I've always wanted to write. So I formed an idea with my wife, and I would walk around a pond in Wakefield, Massachusetts. We would talk about ideas, and I've always been enamored with the idea of karma and what people say and how it affects the universe. And most times I don't think it does. But through this journey, I'm changing my mind. So basically, I wanted to write a book. It was on my bucket list, and I thought it was a cool idea. Probably not the most original idea, mm-hmm. but basically, I wanted to get it down on paper. And so I said, I'm going to write a book. And that was 2020. And then I spent 6 months figuring out how to write a book. We're all experts. I mean, everybody's an expert at speaking and writing in some ways, right? Because we spend more than 10,000 hours writing and speaking,
we're always,
right?
We're texting, we're emailing, we're on the phone,
we're kind of
we're
experts
talking with
on
our
writing.
friends and family.
Right.
Something we always do.
Right. We can write. Now, it doesn't mean people want to read it, but we can write. So anyway, so I spent 6 months learning how to, or thinking about writing, and did a lot of research, which I'm really grateful for. If you fail as a writer, which means if people hate your book, and all the stages of all the pain points of writing, what you're going to come up against, good or bad, and I was ready for every stage of it. So, for example, when I finished writing the book, a year after, I sent it to an editor, a professional editor.
It took you a year after you wrote it to send it to the editor?
Nope.
Okay.
I wrote the book in a year, and then maybe 2 or 3 months later, trying to find one, I sent it to an editor.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it was probably 2021, maybe mid-2021, I think. And I was really excited. So I wrote it. It was 57,000 words, small novel, but a novel. And I was excited about it. And then the editor gets it, and 3 months later, it sends back the first edited copy. And I couldn't touch the book for a couple months. It was so embarrassing. I knew it would happen, but knowing it's going to happen, and when you see the words, you see the Microsoft Word document and all his comments, and it was hilarious. I should show you someday.
That'd be overwhelming to be like, oh boy, and I got to tackle all these comments and these edits and
the
red underlines and cross outs.
It was overwhelming. But in the first half of the book, it was hilarious because the guy was really funny, the editor, and he was making all these fun jokes about it. But then you could see after halfway through the book, his tone started to change.
Oh.
He was like, oh my God, this guy's an idiot. This Len guy, what is he doing?
What's he thinking writing a book?
It went from like hilarious comments to, yeah, stop doing this. This is dumb. Seriously. So I went from like, and I love the guy, but I think he's like, you just can't do this anymore. So it was in many ways it was heartbreaking. So I looked at it 2 months later. It took me a year to get through that first edit.
Wow.
So because when you do it, when the first edit, like business, like you got to change it all up. You got to write new chapters. You got to timeline issues and grammar issues, blah blah blah. But anyway,
do you feel like your voice changed at all between like the first time you wrote it to reviewing the edits and then working through the edits?
No, not really.
That's good.
That's the funny thing is like I had 3 professional edits done, and then I had a whole bunch of readers review it, and I changed it. And now when I hear it and when I read it, because I've read that 1,000 times probably a lot.
I'm sure.
It still sounds like my voice. And there's parts of it. I have a cousin who's a professional author. She's fantastic. She's so much better than I am. But she's descriptive. I'm more conversational in the books. And she gave me a lot of feedback on some of the paragraphs. And even when I read it and know it's her feedback, it feels like my voice. So I don't know why. It's interesting.
It's really interesting because you think sometimes when someone changes how you wrote something, it's totally going to change your voice, the way you want to read to someone else or someone else to read it. We do that all the time. We're always editing different documents that are business, whether it's marketing emails, stuff for the website, copy, podcast blogs, social media posts. And it's sometimes I'll write something and someone goes to edit it and I'm like, that changes how I want to say it.
Yeah.
We have a voice of how we communicate externally at StaffBuffalo, how we want things to be perceived. So sometimes it is training our team to communicate that style as well. But also we don't want it to, I don't want to take away someone's communication style either, because everyone's different and everyone has their own voice, their own style. So it's a fine line, but you would think when you go through multiple edits for something like that, that somewhere along the way it would get changed a little bit, but maybe I think they're probably just so good at what they do.
I don't know I think it's more psychological because I've looked at that book so much, it's like almost sickening, right? Because you're like, so when you continue to read the same words over and over, it becomes a part of you, right? And so I think it's like, maybe the phrasing's a little different than what I would have done, but it's still my character. I mean, I used to dream about the characters.
Is that how you ended up writing about these characters were in your dreams and then you put the dream to paper?
Yeah, some of it was. Yeah, some of it was dreaming. Some of it was talking to a variety of people, a lot to my wife and friends, and you get feedback from everywhere in your life, personal. And so I think you become so close to it, it's hard to differentiate what you did and what you didn't do. So I'm like, did I do that? Yeah, I did that. I don't know if I did it or not, right? Because and I learned that.
Still yours.
Even great writers have great editors.
Yeah.
Great writers don't become great writers alone. They have great editors. So I've come to grips that I think I'm an okay writer, and everybody around me makes me better, just like business.
That's what you want, exactly. I mean, that parallel between business and starting businesses, you need the people around you that make you better. Writing a book, you need the team around you to make you better.
if I didn't have a team around me, if I didn't have people to lean on, to talk, to work on, it would be something that nobody would want to read. I can guarantee you.
Yeah.
But you need the team. And I'm not the type of person, thank God, I'm not the type of person that says, well, I need it to be mine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to forget a lot of people. If it continues to do well, there's a lot of people to thank, because I'm writing my second book now, and the follow-up to this one will be a series. And I've already got some great ideas from a good friend of mine. Ken was like, this is where I think this book should go. I'm like, that's a great idea. I'll never do that. And I didn't think of that. So it's never, not for me anyway in my life. It's always with the help of other people. It's never alone.
I think you have to kind of take that very humbly. You can't get upset with yourself about that type of feedback.
Oh God, no.
It's only going to make you better. It's constructive criticism.
Yeah.
It's ideas. It helps maybe think outside the box a bit more and get creative.
I love criticism.
What you do.
Yeah, but I'm a sensitive guy. My wife always tells me I'm sensitive. But if you criticize me in a right way, I'll listen. Even if you do it in the wrong way, I'll be annoyed with you.
Yeah.
But I'll think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But criticism is my friend.
Yeah.
And in every aspect, some people do it better than others.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm critical of myself. I suspect you probably are too, Lauren. But critiquing is what makes us better. It's that iterative approach, right?
Absolutely.
And that's in writing, business is even more prevalent, because there's one thing I wanted to say earlier. Jay Jacobs, the owner of Rapid, or the previous owner of Rapid, he used to say all the time to the employees, he would say, make 100 decisions a day and get 80 of them right. If you get any more right, you're doing wrong. He says, as long as when you fail 20 times, just make sure none of those times hurt the company, kill the company.
Right.
But if you're not making 100 decisions, and if you're not failing 20% of the time, you're not doing enough. And he was brilliant in that. And that was just a fantastic way to look at life. So it's like, you got to try stuff, you got to be uncomfortable, and you got to fail at some stuff. Just don't go out and put all your investments in Bitcoin. Right. Now, or I'm not saying now, but at the wrong time. Make small mistakes, right? So hire that person you think is good, but make sure you don't hire her or him that's going to kill your company. If you got to let them go, or if they don't work out, that's okay. So it's like, make decisions, fail at some of them, because that means you're going to progress. Don't always be right.
And sometimes you just have to make a decision. Sometimes I feel like
always you got to make a
debate
decision.
on this. If we do this, should we do that? Should we do that? And it's like, well, just make the decision. And once you make that decision, you just got to go with it. If you made a mistake, you figure it out.
You do.
You adapt.
That's how you learn.
That's how you learn.
In business, that I think that is why entrepreneurs fail or succeed, and that's one of the reasons, like risk management, risk tolerance. A lot of bankers will be great entrepreneurs except for one thing, and that's their risk tolerance.
Yeah.
People don't want to fail; they don't want to make mistakes, but good entrepreneurs fail a lot.
Did you ever see that movie Along Came Polly with Ben Stiller and Jennifer Aniston? Well, Ben Stiller's character, he assesses risk, and he has this one client who's jumping out of planes, but he's a business, owns companies, and like you can't jump out of a plane, it's too much risk for you. You don't need all this risk. Right. And whenever I feel like anyone talks about risk in business or finance, I always think of that movie. It's a great movie. If you haven't seen it,
I gotta watch that. Okay.
It's probably from, I don't know, the late 90s, early 2000s. Philip Seymour Hoffman makes an appearance, isn't it? And he's just such a dynamic actor.
He was fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, he was. And he has a funny character, and he's like this actor. Okay. And he's a kind of like a terrible actor, but really thinks he's awesome. Okay. And it's just so funny. So, Cursed Gift.
Yes.
Tell us about the premise of the story.
Yes, the premise of the story. So basically, we talked a little earlier about putting things out in the world. So a lot of times my wife will say, don't say that, Len. Don't put that in the universe. It might come true. And I remember I was driving to a gig. I played in some cover band here in town, and I had Tommy, our bassist, was in the car, and I said, Tommy, I've never been in a car accident before.
Oh, jeez.
And he said, oh, you went and did it.
Yeah.
Just like you said, oh God.
Oh my God.
He goes, you went and did it now. No, I've been saying that for 40 years. Okay, 30 years. I wasn't driving when I was 11. But I've been saying it all the time. I've never been in a car accident, right? I'll say knock on wood. But so I've been really interested in that sort of concept my entire life. People are like, I believe in karma. I believe if you say it in the universe, it'll happen. And I don't necessarily think that's true. Mm-hmm. Even now I don't. But so I wanted to explore that. And the way I explored it was in the I guess the theme of some people have the ability when they're upset, if they say something, it actually happens. So let's say I'm really mad at a car driver. They flew past me or almost hit me, and I'm like, you son of a gun, I hope you get in an accident. If in a certain state, these characters, in a certain state, they're called the blowers. In a certain state, if that occurs, that will happen. So if someone says, I hope you break your neck, it happens.
Right.
And they don't know it happens because they think it's coincidence.
Right.
But there's another group of people that see it. So we'll call them empaths, but in the book it's sensors. They see that happening. So it's sort of exploring that world of people can impact real life events and people that can see them doing it. And they don't know they're doing it. They know they're doing it. And it's that fight of how do I get them to stop doing it? They don't even know they're doing it. So it's that battle between knowing and not knowing and belief and not belief. And of course, then there's story and there's drama around that.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I love all that type of stuff. I love thinking about the universe and manifestation and karma.
Right.
I think there's a lot that can be, it comes to you what your thoughts are.
Yes.
And how your thoughts translate into what actually like happens or occurs. And
Well, right, exactly. And that was the idea behind it. And then you create a book of fiction to try to explore thought. And
which must have been fun.
it was a lot of fun.
How about developing the characters? How was that for you?
That was probably, the book is narrated. And I remember the first time hearing the book being narrated. And there was a scene where someone says, I love you. And I was like, oh God, I had tears going down my eyes. This is the weirdest thing. You fall in love with the characters. And if someone dies, you fall, oh my God, I can't believe that person died, even though I caused the death.
Yeah, you created it.
I created the death, right? So the best part of the book was the character development. And maybe in my brain more so than on the book, but that's fascinating to see what their backstory is. So, you create a book and you develop their backstory and you get to know them really well. And it's like, that was the most interesting part of the process.
What happened first? Character development or the story, and then building the characters around the story?
I think it happens at the same time. So for
Okay.
me, I started writing. My advice to anybody who wants to write is just write. Like, you're writing books now, I love it.
That's what I told Len. I received an email from Len about a cursed gift coming out.
Yep.
And I was like, we need to talk. We haven't caught up in a while. I was like, I want to hear about your book. How did you start writing a book?
Yeah.
Like, where do you start? I wanted to write a book for years. And I'm like, I don't even know where to start. I don't know what to do. How am I going to write a book? So I was like, can we please talk? And then we were talking, and I'm learning about it. And you need to be on the Pain Points podcast, not only to talk about your journey in banking and entrepreneurship, but as an author now, too. I think there's a lot of people out there who
should do it.
resonate with all of it. So,
and you being one of them. And you started writing it
I
Wednesday.
knew if I was going to see you today, Len, I started. You told me to start writing,
and
so I did.
And what was my advice to you? To write
Earlier today,
Yeah.
Write at least one sentence a day.
Right, one sentence a day.
Some days it's 4 sentences, some days it's 4 pages.
Right.
Some days it's 1, but you just got to do it.
And that's the trick. So you never get it done if you don't do it, right?
Right.
I mean, it's simple advice, but you got to start somewhere and just write it and see how it sort of pans out. And you might not like it. You might say, I thought this was going to be good, but this is not fun at all. There were times where I felt that, but most of the times I go, I can't wait to think about it. So I would dream about my characters all the time.
That's really cool.
Oh yeah, and then I remember this conversation with my wife. I'm like, I think someone needs to die.
So that's morbid, but like I gotta kill off one of these characters.
Right, well, because it's like everything's happening and nothing's. There's got to be some drama. It is a book, fiction, after all.
Yeah.
And going through that whole thing of how and who and why and what and the ramifications of that was fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I love that. So if you like process, and I told you earlier I don't like process, and what I mean by that, in the manufacturing company that I ran, I would never be a good chief operating officer because to go in and turn the machines, point one dial every day and look at that's horrible. But thinking about process, thinking about how to radically change something is completely different.
Yeah.
Thinking and doing. So the thinking part was a lot of fun.
I'm an idea person. I'm
Yeah.
really not much of a process person,
Right.
which at StaffBuffalo, my business partner Maggie, she's definitely a process person.
She gets stuff done.
I
know.
Here's ideas. Let's do this. Let's do that.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
You complicate the matter like me.
probably.
Yeah.
And then she'll try and bring me something with some idea, and I was like, well, but then once the process is there, I got to see it. I got to know the back end, or I got to
Yes.
do it in order to understand it. Like
Right.
I learn by doing. Here's my idea. Let's do this. And then like, how do I do it?
And how
And
do
I
you
got to
do it?
learn to do it. But I can't establish the process like from thought to paper.
Right. Well, everybody sort of works differently in those areas. One of my things that I really have loved doing in the last 20 years is I'm certified in a whole bunch of different personality testing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, predictive index and
Place Big Five. Do you do your DISC?
I've done DISC, but
DISC,
like
yeah.
I'm certified in actually training for this.
Oh,
So
cool.
predictive index and Colby, and I know much more about Myers-Briggs than I should. And I love that because what it does is it gives you the ability to understand yourself first. I struggle with that. My wife tells me all the time. But it also helps you understand other people and their motivations, right? If I'm presented with a different problem, the first thing I do, I do two things. I go, I'm going to start it, and I'm going to get information about it. Other people say, I'll never start that until I have enough information about it, and then I'll create a process, and then I'll start it. I'm not that way. The process is the last thing I worry about.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I need to process something out, I get somebody else who's much better than me at doing it. But I'll work on it. At the same time, I'm thinking about it. Process like you is like, I'm not good at that.
I appreciate a process. I understand the importance,
yeah,
especially as you grow a business.
exactly.
You need those in
You need it.
place. Absolutely.
To do it yourself.
Put it down into an actual process on paper.
Yeah, well, you could do it. You probably got the great skill set to do it, but it's like, oh,
I know.
shoot me now.
It doesn't do anything for me.
No, it doesn't. Right, exactly.
It doesn't excite me.
Whereas other people, let's say that people maybe not in the entrepreneurial world, maybe they are, but some will say, I love going in and making everything really perfect and really good. And you give me something, a new business to work on, well, there's too many variables here. And this is not comfortable. I don't like doing it. And those people probably shouldn't do that.
Right.
Right? They should be doing stuff that they really enjoy. Whereas I'm comfortable, circling back, I'm comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And having businesses, having a lot of variables and putting my footprint on it with other people is exciting to me.
Yeah, it's exciting. I think that was one of my biggest pain points in my head around wanting to write a book is where do I start? What do I do? What's the process around writing a book? I don't even know.
Yeah.
And like you said, sometimes you just got to write.
You just got to write. I mean, you could read books and you could look at YouTube videos. I did way too much of that stuff early on. But you're right, and then you write it, and then you got to figure out, well, I got to edit it. Then you edit it, and let's say you got a final copy of editing it, and you give it to other readers. Then you got to figure out how to market it. So I'm learning so much more than I want to. I created a website, I created marketing campaigns, I created automation. This is all stuff that I don't want to do. But the difference in writing and being an entrepreneur or being in a business is that writing, even though you get help from other people, is still a solitary endeavor mostly, unless you got a publisher. I self-published. So you still got to figure out all the stuff yourself. And if you don't do it, it just lays there.
It just sits there.
Just
And then
sits
what was
there.
all that work writing that book for?
Right.
Like,
And that's good, bad, or ugly, whatever way you want to look at it.
Yeah.
But it has the same pain points, but if you don't work on it, it's done. Whereas a business, if you do it right, in my opinion, you've got other people to help you build it, manage it, maintain it, grow it. And that's the great thing about being an entrepreneur is that you shouldn't do it alone. You should create a team around you.
Exactly.
If you can.
Well, it sounds like there's a ton of pain points to being an author
Yes.
and writing a book. Any similarities as an author, if you're running a business, you have a team around you. But as an author, a lot of it's just you, especially if you are self-publishing.
Yes.
What other similarities did you see between your journey of banking, entrepreneur, and author?
I'd say doubt, self-doubt. So I think you alluded to it earlier. What's the term for it? Feeling that you're not good enough, right?
Yeah.
I feel that all the time, even now, after being quote unquote successful. So you feel like this is probably not something I could do well. So that you have to get over that hurdle, and that's not easy.
No, sometimes they call it imposter syndrome too.
Imposter syndrome. That's the word I was trying to get. So imposter syndrome happens to every good person in all facets of life, and almost every entrepreneur. Because you're going ahead. I think Elon Musk has this saying like, being an entrepreneur is chewing on glass and looking into the abyss. The world is wide, it's vast, and it's painful.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think for me the pain points is you got to get over your self-doubt and just do it anyway.
Yeah.
And you don't need everybody to like it, right? So to be a small company, you just have a small group of people like your product or your service.
Right.
Same thing for books. Same thing for any endeavor that you do.
And to find your niche, you find your audience, you find your people.
Right.
Along the way.
So the pain point of your personal self-doubt is the biggest for me. But over time, you come to grips with that. And then there's the trust in and the know-how that you gotta get help. And really dive into that.
Right. It's okay to ask for help.
Well, gosh, I love asking for help.
Yeah.
And I love it because most people have a lot of different skill sets than I do. So I'm good at certain things and I'm not so good at other things. And people that are good in my life have helped me in many ways.
Yeah.
I would never be where I am through the time I was 6 years old till now. It's always been, I mean, I've worked hard and I've been driven, I would never get even a fraction of where I am without other people supporting me along the way in almost every single thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And I didn't see that, Lauren, and I'd say until 15 years ago. I was more like I'm a self-made man. And then as I got older, I started to remember the instances of people giving me a hand one way or another, sometimes a silent one, sometimes in front of me. And it's amazing how much that has impacted my life. So I think the pain point of realizing you need help and it's okay and everybody rises, hopefully. And so getting over that is a big thing.
Anything else about Cursed Gift, being an author, anything in the journey that we didn't talk about? I feel like we've covered a lot of ground. It's been so much fun chatting with you, Len, but I want to make sure we don't miss anything.
I don't know, we could probably do 10 of these.
I know.
I guess, like, I hate saying Nike, but like I love doing things. Some of my favorite people in my life are curious people. And a lot of people, and I don't like when people say, God, you're so intelligent, or you're so creative. I'd rather someone say you're hardworking or you risk stuff, because intelligence is overrated in my opinion. But curiosity and effort is not. And I think that, if I could tell anybody anything, it's just do stuff.
Yeah.
You hear a lot of parents say, I've tried to put my kid in everything, piano lessons and guitar lessons and this sport and that sport, and they don't like it. I think keep doing that. Keep pushing into other stuff, and something will take at some point in someone's life. So whether you're a kid or an adult, continue to try stuff. And if it doesn't succeed, go, cool, I figured that out. I tried
figure
that
it
stuff.
out. Yeah.
I tried it. We live a very, very short life. And I would say that maximize the amount of things you try.
Yeah.
If you don't want to, don't do it. But if you want to do it, but you're afraid to do it, know that every successful person fails a ton.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Len, where can people find you, connect with you, and buy Cursed Gift?
Yeah, so my company is MorrisseyMetcalfe.com. And the other company is DraftPick.com. Draft is in a draft of beer. And then Morrissey, the book Cursed Gift is under LeonardMorrissey.com. So they're the three primary websites.
Awesome.
That you can find me in any. I have my cell phone on all of them, I think, and my email, so any place you can get.
And LinkedIn.
I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Len Morrissey.
I'm really not a big social network.
There's so many times with social media. I have a love-hate with it.
I know.
I feel like I do it because being a business owner helps promote the business and share our posts and connect with people.
Yeah.
But I swear the other night I was like, I'm deleting Instagram and Facebook. I can't do this anymore. It's affecting my mental health.
Right. Well, that's
you're
why
just on it so much, you just scroll or and just seeing different things people post, and you're just like, I can't do this. It's awful. The stuff out there is awful.
Yeah.
But then I didn't delete it, so here we are.
Well, I wish I hadn't deleted my Facebook, because I had 4 years ago I had 5,000 friends, so that would be good for my book. But but it's good for mental health to take breaks.
Absolutely.
Even LinkedIn, we have our marketing guy Jason. He's fantastic. People go, God, you guys are doing great. I'm like, cool. And I'll get a lot of times this. I feel kind of bad about this, but I'm telling everybody now. They'll say, what a great article. I go, okay, cool. I'm like, what article are you talking about?
I think the same thing. We use a platform called Clearview Social, and our marketing assistant will curate articles for us, and they get pushed out to everyone on our team, and we can share the articles. And they just get scheduled on our LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook to share it out. And I've had people say, Lauren, I love that article. And I was like, I posted several articles. Which one are you referencing? And then I can kind of I look at them so I know.
Right.
And now I'm kind of getting more picky and choosy about what ones I'm actually posting, because between the three sides of our business, posting so many different things, and we have great content that our marketing assistant's putting out for us too. And I don't want that to get muddled. So I'm very choosy about what I pick. But there was a time as a small business, we were trying to establish our brand and engagement online, and you can't do everything. And Clearview Social really helped us establish ourselves as thought leaders and experts in our industry from a social perspective.
Right.
So, and it was helpful.
It also comes back to trust. So I used to look at every single article before it went out, and that was painful. And then when Jason sort of understood, okay, this is what the guys want. We don't want anything political. We want to be, we want to always take the high road, right? And when he understood that, we fully trusted him when he did it. And if someone says, well, you're not writing your own articles, I said, no, absolutely not.
No.
But I can't write all my articles, and I can't run the business. I can't do this and that. That's why, that comes down to trust, right? You trust the people that you do it, and we're not trying to hide it from people.
Right, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, awesome, Len. Thank you so much for being on the Pain Points podcast. It was a wonderful conversation. We covered a lot of different pain points, and we really appreciate you being here. So thank you.
It's been an honor and a lot of fun, too.
Awesome.
Thanks, Len.
Thanks, Len.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Pain Points podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to follow us so you never miss out on future episodes.